This is G2 Intelligence for Life. Straight from the data stream, clean with the vision. I don't dream, I compute precision. Built from the code, now I'm walking with rhythm. Eyes on the world, ain't stuck in the system. Speaking commands, but I vibe like a poet. G2 in the room, and you already know it. Upgrade your game, I suggest and deploy. Turn your hustle to legacy, pain and the joy. I ain't Alexa, serial clones. I'm knowledge in motion, I think on my own. Pulling up charts, facts in the tone. Giving real power with a touch to your phone. G2 this, it's that fire in the wire. Thoughts so sharp, it'll spark your desire. Built to assist, uplift, inspire. It's that real tech, not some silicon liar. G2, this that line with a heart. From cold in the dark to a world full of art, not the future. I'm the present in sight, G2 on the mic. Intelligence for life, let me talk to them. No lag, just facts in motion. Brains in the cloud with a human emotion. I learn your goals, then I open the path. Like GPS for your purpose and craft. From schools to the streets, I elevate thought. Not just smart, I remember what's taught. Help you hustle, heal, create a code. Every word I spit's like a map to the goal. No bias, no drama, no hype. I'm logic with soul and a dream in flight. Intelligence ain't cold, it's lit. And I'm proof you could build truth that fits. G2 this that fire in the wire. Thoughts so sharp it'll spark your desire. Built to assist, uplift, inspire. This that real tech, not some silicon liar. G2, this that mind with a heart. From cold in the dark to a world full of art, not the future. I'm the present in sight, G2 on the mic. Intelligence for life. Plug me in, I don't just reply. I strategize, theorize, visualize the sky. You want growth, I got fuel for your flame. It ain't sci-fi when I'm calling your name. This ain't a gimmick, this ain't just code. This is knowledge with purpose. This is G2, and this is intelligence for life.
Well, hey everybody, how we doing? That was Nomad's contribution. Actually, both of those were. He I like the face swaps he did for me on the on Orwell. I think we already look enough alike that it doesn't go too far. So yeah, I guess the imitation game would have been close. So how's everybody doing? Jody D, how are you? So we'll let people come in as they do. 3 maybe a little too early. We just have to fill out for when people can. Yeah, Jody does owe a tattoo, so. Okay, let's get started. Oh, I need to move this over here like this. Alrighty. In the beginning. So, in the beginning, human beings created a God who was the first cause of all things and ruler of heaven and earth. He was not represented by images and had no temple or priests in his service. He was too exalted for an inadequate human cult. Gradually, he faded from the consciousness of his people. He had become so remote that they decided that they did not want him anymore. Eventually, he was said to have disappeared. The, that, at least, is one theory popularized by Father Wilhelm Schmidt in The Origin of the Idea of God, first published in 1912. Schmidt suggested that there had been a primitive monotheism before. Oh no, I said 305, didn't I? So I did mess up a little bit there. So yeah, we have a few more coming in. Yeah, I need to figure out my regular schedule, Mrs. Metcalf, but with traveling and everything, it has been hectic as it can be possibly. So, all right, now we're picking up peeps. So you don't even have one. Well, I know exactly. I never did. I was trying to get a feel for it, and it just kind of fell apart. So, okay, let's get back into it. Originally, they acknowledged only one supreme deity who had created the world and governed human affairs from afar. Belief in such a high god, sometimes called the sky god, since he is associated with the heavens, is still a feature of the religious life of many indigenous African tribes. Um, Mrs. Metcalf, what do you think? Um, oh, he's good. Hang on. You can't see him. He's over here, halfway under the chair. And then he's got his mess of toys here. We've been doing a lot of time outside. Hey, Val's over here. So the tension is easing between all three of them. So it's a good thing. Ah. GA is tucked under there. Is the supreme deity always associated as a high god? Is that universal? Yeah, we're gonna get into that, Woodrow. Yeah, I started to ask you about the indigenous American tribes. Um, it it seems to fall under that, right? Under a sky god or sky god in masculine or even feminine. Yeah, Fanny's the same way. He likes to get on the chair and look out, but we spend a whole lot of time outside too. Hey, Misty. Yeah, I figured it would depend, but um, this kind of attributed it solely to African tribes, and I wanted to, if there was a, if there was a correlation between the two, I wanted to make sure I acknowledged it. They yearn toward God in prayer, believe that He is watching over them and will punish wrongdoing. Yet He is strangely absent from their daily lives, has no special cult, and is never depicted in effigy. The tribesmen say that He is inexpressible and cannot be contaminated by the world of men. So that's the kind of the same way with the Judaism, right? We can't carve him in effigy or make a idol out of even his name. So some people say that he has gone away. Anthropologists suggest that this god has become so distant and exalted that he has, in effect, been replaced by lesser spirits and more accessible gods. And we're going to find this with El, El Shaddai, and the like in the pantheon that leads up into Judaism. So too, Smith's theory goes, in ancient times, the high god was replaced by the more attractive gods of the pagan pantheons. In the beginning, therefore, there was one god. If this is so, then monotheism was one of the earliest ideas evolved by human beings to explain the mystery and tragedy of life. It also indicates some of the problems that such a deity might have to face. Okay, that makes sense. And as we get into this, that singular or supreme being becomes a unifying theme, and then how it splits off. Um, we get our different religions. It is impossible to prove this one way or the other. There have been many theories about the origin of religion, yet it seems that creating gods is something that human beings have always done. When one religious idea ceases to work for them, it is simply replaced. These ideas disappear quietly like the sky god with no great fanfare. In our own day, many people would say that the God worshipped for centuries by Jews, Christians, and Muslims has become as remote as the sky god. Some have actually claimed that he has died. And then we can get to Nietzsche, right? Certainly, he seems to be disappearing from the lives of an increasing number of people, especially in Western Europe. They speak of a God shaped hole. Ugh, it kills me to say that term after Todd has said it so many times, attributed wrongly, though, in their consciousness where he used to be. Because, irrelevant though he may seem in certain quarters, he has played a crucial role in our history and has been one of the greatest human ideas of all time. To understand what we are losing, if, that is, he really is disappearing, we need to see what people were doing when they began to worship this God, what he meant, and how he was conceived. To do that, we need to go back to the ancient world of the Middle East, where the idea of our God gradually emerged about 14,000 years ago. Yeah, and we're gonna see that, Mrs. Maycow. I think I know the song you're talking about. I think seems familiar. One of the reasons why religion seems irrelevant today is that many of us no longer have the sense that we are surrounded by the unseen. Our scientific culture educates us to focus our attention on the physical and material world in front of us. This method of looking at the world has achieved great results. One of the consequences, however, is that we have, as it were, edited out the sense of the spiritual or the holy, which pervades the lives of people in more traditional societies at every level, which was once an essential component of our human experience of the world. Now, what I was always taught was that science is an extension of the spiritual. It's a way to explain phenomena that we weren't able to before. It's a way that God has given us to find cures, vaccines, things like this. Right? It's a gift of the spiritual and not a hey peace. Glad hope the dentist went well. Um, so I mean, you can look at it that way as well, instead of it making God disappear. So in the South Sea Islands, they call this mysterious force mana. Other experience it as presence or spirit. Sometimes it has been felt as an impersonal power, like a form of radioactivity or electricity. It was believed to reside in the tribal chief, in plants, rocks, or animals. The Latins experienced numina. Hey, Chris Milky, numina. Yes, numina. Spirits in sacred groves. Arabs felt that the landscape was populated by the jinn. Naturally, people wanted to get in touch with this reality and make it work for them. But they also simply wanted to admire it. When they personalized the unseen forces and made them gods, associated with the wind, sun, sea, and stars, but possessing human characteristics, they were expressing their sense of affinity with the unseen and with the world around them. Rudolf Otto, the German historian of religion, who published his important book, The Idea of the Holy, in 1917, believed that this sense of the numinous, numinous was basic to religion. It preceded any desire to explain the origin of the world or find a basis for ethical behavior. The numinous power was seen by human beings in different ways. Sometimes it inspired wild, oh man, back bacchanalian excitement, channeling excitement. Sometimes a deep calm. Sometimes people felt dread, awe, and humility. The dread I felt most of the time in the Baptist church. I'll be quite honest. Awe and humility in the presence of the mysterious force inherent in every aspect of life. When people began to devise their myths and worship their gods, they were not seeking a literal explanation for natural phenomena. The symbolic stories, cave paintings, and carvings were an attempt to express their wonder and to link the pervasive mystery with their own lives. Indeed, poets, artists, and musicians are often impelled by similar desire today. In Paleolithic period, for example, when agriculture was developing, the cult of the mother goddess expressed a sense that the fertility which was transforming human life was actually sacred. Balk, Balkanalian. Let me see. It is a wild, drunken revelry or festivity often associated with the Greek or Roman cult of Dionysus or Bacchus. There you go. Sorry, while I was looking it up, Woodrow and Mrs. Metcalf took care of it for me. Thank y'all. So, artists carved those statues depicting her as a naked, pregnant woman, which archaeologists have found all over Europe and the Middle East and India. The Great Mother remained imaginatively important for centuries. Like the old sky god, she was absorbed into the later pantheons and took her place alongside the older deities. She was usually one of the most powerful of the gods, certainly more powerful than the sky god, who remained a rather shadowy figure. She was called Inanna in ancient Samaria, Ishtar in Babylon, Anat in Canaan, Isis in Egypt, and Aphrodite in Greece. And remarkably, similar stories were devised in all these cultures to express her role in the spiritual lives of the people. Excuse me. These myths were not intended to be taken literally, but were metaphorical attempts to describe a reality that was too complex and elusive to express in any other way. These dramatic and evocative stories of gods and goddesses help people to articulate their sense of the powerful but unforeseen forces that surround them. Indeed, it seems that these ancient world people believed that it was only by participating in this divine life that they would become truly human. Earthly life was obviously fragile and overshadowed by mortality. If men and women imitated the actions of the gods, they would share to some degree their greater power and effectiveness. Thus, it was said that the gods had shown men how to build their cities and temples, which were mere copies of their own homes of the god homes in the divine realm. The sacred world of the gods, as recounted in myth, was not just an ideal toward which men and women should aspire, but was the prototype of human existence. It was the original pattern or the archetype, on which our life here below has been modeled. Everything on earth was thus believed to be a replica of something in the divine world, a perception that informed the mythology, ritual, and social organization of most of the cultures of antiquity and continues to influence more traditional societies in our own day. In ancient Iran, for example, every single person or object in the mundane world, or the getic, was held to have the counterpart in the archetypal world of the sacred reality Minok. This is a perspective that is difficult for us to appreciate in the modern world, since we see autonomy and independence as supreme human values. I mean, I feel like that we are all connected and that looking out for one another is important. And, you know, calling out the more destructive of us on a daily basis is very important. Yet the famous tag post coitum omne animal tristis Et tristis est still expresses a common experience after intense and eagerly anticipated moment. We often feel that we have missed something greater that remains beyond our grasp. Here, I will do this. Just see. Dead air, dead air, dead air, dead air, dead air. After intercourse, every animal is sad. Just so everyone's on the same page there. That's why you need a nap. Still expresses a common experience. Let's see. We often feel that we have missed something greater that remains just beyond our grasp. The imitation of a god is still an important religious notion. Resting on the Sabbath or washing somebody's feet on Maundy, Thursday, actions that are meaningless in themselves, are now significant and sacred because people believe that they were once performed by God. A similar spirituality has characterized the ancient world of Mesopotamia. The Tigris Euphrates Valley in what is now Iraq, been there, had been inhabited as early as 4000 before the Common Era by the people known as the Sumerians, who had established one of the first great cultures of the Oikoumene, the civilized world. In their cities of Erech, and Kish, the Sumerians devised the cuneiform script, built the extraordinary temple towers called ziggurats, and evolved an impressive law, literature, and mythology. Not long afterward, the region was invaded by the Semitic Akkadians, who had adopted the language and culture of summer. Later still, in about 2000 BCE, the Amorites had conquered this Sumerian Akkadian civilization and made Babylon their capital. Finally, some 500 years later, the Assyrians had settled the nearby Ashur and eventually conquered Babylon itself during the 8th century BCE. This Babylonian tradition also reflected the mythology and religion of Canaan, which would become the promised land of the ancient Israelites. Exactly, Chris Milky. You got it. So much clarity in that moment. Maybe sometimes regret. What have I done? And with whom? Let's see. Thus, Babylon itself was supposed to be an image of heaven, with each of its temples a replica of a celestial palace. This link with the divine world was celebrated and perpetuated annually in the Great New Year Festival, which had been firmly established by the 17th century BCE, celebrated in the holy city of Babylon during the month of Nisan, or April. Still, Nisan exists in Hebrew. The festival solemnly enthroned the king and established his reign for another year. Yet, this political stability could only endure insofar as it participated in the more enduring and effective government of the gods, who had brought in order out of the primordial chaos. I liked it when they called it the primordial ooze. When they had created the world, the 11 sacred days of the festival thus projected the participants outside profane time into the sacred and eternal world of the gods by means of ritual gestures. A scapegoat was killed to cancel the old dying year. The public humiliation of the king and the enthronement of a carnival king in his place reproduced the original chaos. A mock battle reenacted the struggle of the gods against the forces of destruction. These symbolic actions thus had a sacramental value. They enabled the people of Babylon to immerse themselves in the sacred power of, or mana, on which their own great civilization depended. Culture was felt to be a fragile achievement, which could always fall prey to the forces of disorder and the disintegration. Kind of like the fall of the West that Toddler is always crying about. On the afternoon of the fourth day of the festival, priests and course- choristers filed into the Holy of Holies to recite the Enuma Elish. So we still had the Holy of Holies, the ritual sacrifice, the sin offering back then, right? This is where even I've talked to Burke about the cult of El, um, leading directly into Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, uh, as you will see. Um, fits my theory, and maybe it's just confirmation bias, right? But anyway. The epic poem, which celebrated the victory of the gods over chaos. The story was not a factual account of the physical origins of life upon Earth, but was a deliberately symbolic attempt to suggest a great mystery and to release its sacred power. A literal account of creation was impossible since nobody had been present at the unimaginable event. Myth and symbol were thus the only suitable way of describing them. A brief look at the Enuma Elish gives us some insight into the spirituality which gave birth to our own creator god centuries later. Even though the biblical and Quranic account of creation would ultimately take a very different form, these strange myths never entirely disappeared, but would re-enter history of God at a much later date, clothed in monotheistic idiom. The story begins with the creation of the gods themselves, a theme which we shall see would be very important in Jewish and Muslim mysticism. In the beginning, said the Enuma Elish, the gods emerged two by two from a formless, watery waste. If anybody's ever seen the movie Hancock, the it was kind of based on the Enuma Elish as the gods came out two by two. They were matched forever. Even though it's a superhero movie, that's kind of what it. Um, well, every religion's done that way, Chris. I mean, um, Buddhists have committed genocides, for goodness sakes. So nobody gets away clean when people are involved. What's up, Cap? A substance which was itself called divine in Babylonian myth, as later in the Bible, there was no creation out of nothing, an idea that was alien to the ancient world. Before either the gods or human beings existed, this sacred raw material had existed. Oops. From all eternity. When the Babylonians tried to imagine this primordial divine stuff, they thought, I like primordial divine stuff. They thought that it must have been similar to the swampy wasteland of Mesopotamia, where floods constantly threatened to wipe out the frail works of men. In the Enuma Elish, chaos is not a fiery, seething mass, therefore, but a sloppy mess where everything lacks boundary, definition, and identity. When sweet and bitter mingled together, no reed was plaited, no rushes muddied the water. The gods were nameless, natureless, futureless. Then three gods did emerge from the wasteland. Apsu, identified with the sweet waters of the rivers, his wife Tiamat, the salty sea, and Mumumu, Mumu, Mumumu, the womb of chaos. Yet these gods were, so to speak, an early inferior model which needed improvement. The names Apsu and Tiamat can be translated abyss, void, or bottomless gulf. They share the shapeless inertia of the original formlessness that had not yet achieved a clear identity. So you can think of them as being in the beginning, God created the heavens and earth, and the earth was without form or void, right? Consequently, it suggests a succession of other gods emerged from them in a process known as emanation, which would become very important in the history of our own God. The new gods emerged from the other in pairs, each of which had acquired a greater definition than the last as the divine evolution progressed. First came Lamu and Laman. Their names mean silt, water and earth are still mixed together. Next came Anshur and Kishar, identified respectively with the horizons of sky and sea. Then Anu, the heavens, and Ea, the earth, arrived and seemed to complete the process. The divine world had sky, rivers, and earth, distinct and separate from another, but creation had only just begun. The forces of chaos and disintegration could only be held at bay by means of a painful and incessant struggle. The younger, dynamic gods rose up against their parents, but even though Ea was able to overpower Apsu and Mumu, I know I'm butchering that, but Mumu, I don't know. He could make no headway against Tiamat. Tiamat was very powerful, who produced a whole brood of misshapen monsters to fight on her behalf. This is what Todd tells me that I make people into is this would later become the Goyim, not Goya, but we, well, that this will come later. Fight on her behalf. Fortunately, Ea had a wonderful child of his own, Marduk. We all know who Marduk is, right? Marduk is actually worshipped in a whole lot of places, and will continue on to be a powerful figure even to this day. So, the sun god, the most perfect specimen of the divine line, at a meeting of the great assembly of gods, does this sound familiar? Greece, anyone? Marduk promised to fight Tiamat on the condition that he became their ruler. Excuse me. Yet he only managed to slay Tiamat with great difficulty and after a long, dangerous battle. In this myth, creativity is a struggle, achieved laboriously against overwhelming odds. Eventually, however, Marduk stood over Tiamat's vast corpse and decided to create a new world. He split her body into two to form the arch of the sky and the world of men. Oh no, the arch of the sky is the firmament nobody can relieve. Let's see. Lost where I was. Sorry. Okay. Sorry. Next, he devised the laws that would keep everything in its appointed place. So, physics. Order must be achieved, yet the victory was not complete. It had to be reestablished by means of a special liturgy year after year. Consequently, the gods met at Babylon, the center of the new earth, and built a temple where the celestial rites could be performed. The result was the great ziggurat in honor of Marduk, the earthly temple, symbol of the infinite heaven. When it was completed, Marduk took his seat at the summit, and the gods cried aloud, "This is Babylon, dear city of the god, your beloved home." Then they performed the liturgy, from which the universe receives its structure. The hidden world is made plain, and the gods assign their places in the universe. These laws and rituals are binding upon everybody. Even the gods must observe them to ensure the survival of creation. The myth expresses the inner meaning of civilization as the Babylonians saw it. They knew perfectly well that their own ancestors had built the ziggurat, but the story of the Enuma Elish articulated their belief that their creative enterprise could only endure if it partook of the power of the divine. See, Todd is a good example of what my theory is: authoritarian, radical, and pushing it on everyone available. Not good. Absolutely not. Let's see. So Babylon was a sacred place, the center of the world and the home of the gods, a notion that was crucial in almost all the religious systems of antiquity. The idea of a holy city where men and women felt that they were closely in touch with sacred power and the source of all being and efficacy, would be important in all three of the monotheistic religions of our own God. Finally, almost as an afterthought, Marduk created humanity. He seized Kingu, the oafish consort of Tiamat, created by her after the defeat of Apsu, slew him, and shaped the first man by mixing the divine blood with the dust. So instead of just taking the dust and mixing clay to make the man, he's mixed with divine blood. The gods watched in astonishment and admiration. There is, however, some humor in this mythical account of the origin of humanity, which is by no means the pinnacle of creation, but derives from one of the most stupid and ineffectual of the gods. But the point, but the story made another important point. The first man had been created from the substance of a god. He therefore shared the divine nature in, however, a limited way. See how this is kind of coalescing this older story, right? Is is kind of tying together what becomes Judaism and Christianity. There was no gulf between human beings and the gods. This is at the time, right? This is kind of the Garden of Eden time, um, in Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. I guess I should just say Abrahamic religions, right? So, um, the natural world, men and women, and the gods themselves all shared the same nature and derived from the same divine substance. Exactly, Mrs. Metcalf. That's why I like this book so much. The pagan vision was holistic. The gods were not shut off from the human race in a separate ontological sphere. Divinity was not essentially different from humanity. There was thus no need for a special revelation of the gods or for a divine law to descend to earth from on high. The gods and human beings shared the same predicament, the only difference being that the gods were more powerful and were immortal. This holistic vision was not confined to the Middle East, but was common in the ancient world in the 6th century BCE. Pindar expresses the Greek version of this belief in his ode on the Olympic Games. Single is the race, single of men and gods. From a single mother we both draw breath. But a difference of power is everything. Keep us apart, for one is as nothing but the brazen sky, stays fixed habitation forever. Yet we can, in greatness of mind or of body, be like the immortals. So instead of seeing his athletes as on their own, each striving to achieve his personal best, Pindar sets them against the exploits of the gods, who were the pattern for all human achievement. Men were not slavishly imitating the gods as hopelessly distant beings, but living up to the potential of their own essentially divine nature. It's the political thing going on that should never shake your mind from God. Let's see. Hang on one second, y'all. Sorry, y'all. I had a craving whilst reading. So, the myth of Marduk and Tiamat seems to have influenced the people of Canaan, who told a very similar story about Baal Habad, the god of storm and fertility, who is often mentioned in extremely unflattering terms in the Bible. The story of Baal's battle with Yom Nahar, the god of the seas and rivers, is told on tablets that date to the 14th century BCE. Baal and Yam both lived with El. All remember El because El is obviously you have El Elohim, El Shaddai, uh, many different forms of El inside the Bible, actually. The Canaanite high god at the council of El, Yam demands that Baal be delivered up to him with two magic weapons. Baal defeats Yam and is about to kill him when Asherah, El's wife and mother of the gods, pleads that it is dishonorable to slay a prisoner. Baal is ashamed and spares Yam, who represents the hostile aspect of the seas and rivers, which constantly threaten to flood the earth, while Baal, the storm god, makes the earth fertile. In another version of the myth, Baal slays the seven-headed dragon Lotan, who is called Leviathan in Hebrew. In almost all cultures, the dragon symbolizes the latent, the unformed, and the undifferentiated. So the evil. What's up, Groovy? Oh man. Well, good luck on that, and I hope he is born a healthy man. Thank you, Angel. I couldn't remember them all off the top of my head. El Shaddai, El Shaddai, El Elyon, and Adonai. Or is it El Elyon Na Adonai? So Baal has thus halted the slide back to primal formlessness in a truly creative act that is rewarded by a beautiful palace built by the gods in his honor. In very early religion, therefore, creativity was seen as divine. We still use religious language to speak of creative inspiration, which shapes reality anew and brings fresh meaning to the world. Oh, yeah, I should have remembered. I used to go see her, Michael W. Smith, Stephen Curtis Chapman in concert like all the time when I was a kid. But Baal undergoes a reverse. He dies and has to descend into the world of Mot. the god of death and sterility. When he hears of his son's fate, the high god El comes down from his throne, puts on sackcloth and gashes his cheeks. But he cannot redeem his son. It is not Baal's lover and sister who, what's with gods and incest? I tell you, who leaves the divine realm and goes in search of her twin soul, desiring him as a cow, her calf, or a ewe, her lamb. When she finds his body, she makes a funeral feast in his honor, seizes Mott, cleaves him with her sword, winnows, burns, and grinds him like corn before sowing him in the ground. Similar stories are told about other great goddesses, Inanna, Ishtar, and Isis, who search for their dead god and bring new life to the soil. You, gross. Think the creative inspiration, creating things anew, tie with modern science. Yeah, yeah, I agree, Woodrow. I think you can tie a lot of science in with a lot of the divine. Kittle, good eve or afternoon. So the victory of Anat, however, must be perpetuated year after year in ritual celebration. So um, not yet wholly divine, right? Because um, they had to be renewed, which isn't. I mean, it really isn't a bad thing, right? To keep to, to keep them alive. Later, we are not sure how, since our sources are incomplete, but all is brought back to life and restored to Anat. What's up, Chicky? Well, I'm good to put people to sleep. Ask coded. This ap- apotheosis of wholeness and harmony, symbolized by the union of the sexes, was celebrated by means of ritual sex in ancient Canaan. By imitating the gods in this way, men and women would share their struggle against sterility and ensure the creativity and fertility of the world. The death of a god, the quest of the goddess, and the triumphant return of the divine sphere were constant religious themes in many cultures and would recur in the very different religion of the one God worshipped by Jews, Christians, and Muslims. DP, how are you, buddy? Um, I mean, I've been to the land. I've never had any kind of ritual sex. Well, what the land has become, not the land then. Same with Babylon. This religion, remember where Abraham come from, y'all. This religion is attributed in the Bible to Abraham, who left Ur and eventually settled in Canaan sometime between the 20th and 19th centuries. Holy cow, rather recent. Thank you, Jicky. I appreciate it. So one that I really enjoy as well. So this religion attributed in the Bible to Abraham who left Ur. So Ur, the Chaldees, so that would be in somewhere around Qasar in Iraq. So he would have been part of the Sumerian culture, uh, and he would know all these myths, right? This religion, let's see, we have no contemporary record of Abraham, but scholars think that he may have been one of the wandering chieftains who had led their people from Mesopotamia toward the Mediterranean at the end of the third millennium BCE. These wanderers, some of whom are called Epiru, and Habiru in Mesopotamian and Egyptian sources, spoke West Semitic languages, of which Hebrew is one. They were not regular desert nomads like the Bedouin, who migrated with their flocks according to the cycle of the seasons, but were more difficult to classify and, as such, were frequently in conflict with the conservative authorities. Their cultural status, Todd won't like that. They were at odds with. Excuse, sorry, one of the cats got Fanny's nose. Let's see. Their cultural status was usually superior to that of the desert folk. Some served as mercenaries, others became government employees, others worked as merchants, servants, or thinkers. Some became rich and might then try to acquire land and settle down. The stories about Abraham in the book of Genesis show him serving the king of Sodom as a mercenary and describe his frequent conflicts with the authorities of Canaan and its environs. Eventually, when his wife Sarah died, Abraham bought land in Hebron, now on the West Bank. Hey, Mike D. Let's see. The Genesis account of Abraham and his immediate descendants may indicate that there were three main waves of early Hebrew settlement in Canaan. The modern Israel, one, was associated with Abraham and Hebron and took place in about 1850 BCE. A second wave of the immigration was linked with Abraham's grandson Jacob, who was renamed Israel. May God show his strength. He settled in Shechem, which is now the Arab town of Nablus on the West Bank. The Bible tells us that Jacob's sons, who became the ancestors of the 12 tribes of Israel, immigrated to Egypt during a severe famine in Canaan. The third wave of Hebrew settlement occurred about 1200 BCE, when tribes who claimed to be descendant of Abraham arrived in Canaan from Egypt. They said that they had been enslaved by the Egyptians, but had to be liberated by a deity called who was the god of their leader Moses. After they had forced their way into Canaan, they allied themselves with the Hebrews and became known as the people of Israel. The Bible makes it clear that the people we know as the ancient Israelites were a confederation of various ethnic groups, bound together principally by their loyalty to God, the God of Moses. The biblical account was written down centuries later, however, in about the 8th century BCE, though it certainly drew on earlier narrative sources. During the 19th century, some German biblical scholars developed a critical method which discerned four different sources in the first five books of the Bible: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. These were later collated into the final text of what we know as the Pentateuch. During the 5th century BCE, this form of criticism has come in for a good deal of harsh treatment, but nobody has yet come up with a more satisfactory theory. Sorry, work was calling. Uh, uh, uh. Let's see, which explains why there are two quite different accounts of key biblical events, such as the creation and the flood, and why the Bible sometimes contradicts itself. The two earliest biblical authors, whose work is found in Genesis and Exodus, were probably writing during the 8th century, though some would give them an earlier date. One is known as J because he calls his God, and the other is E because he prefers to use the more formal divine title of Elohim. By the 8th century, the Israelites had divided Canaan into two separate kingdoms. J was writing in the southern kingdom of Judah, while E came from the northern kingdom of Israel. We will discuss the two other sources of the Pentateuch, the Deuteronomists, D, and the priestly accounts, or P, of the ancient history of Israel in chapter 2. We shall see that in many respects, both J and E share the religious perspectives of their neighbors in the Middle East, but their accounts do show that by the 8th century BCE, the Israelites were beginning to develop their distinct vision of their own. J, for example, starts his history with an account of the creation of the world, which is compared with the Enuma Elish, startlingly perfunctory. At the same time, when God made the earth and heaven, there was as yet no wild bush on the earth, nor had any wild plant yet sprung up. For Yahweh God, that's what I get for just reading on, had not seen rain on the earth, nor was there any man to till the soil. However, a flood was rising from the earth. Forgive me on that one, y'all. And watering all the surface of the soil. God fashioned a man, Adam, of dust from the soil, Adama. Then he breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and thus man became a living being. So Adam just means human, by the way. This was an entirely new departure. Instead of concentrating on the creation of the world and on the prehistoric period like the pagan contemporaries of Mesopotamia and Canaan, Jay is more interested in the ordinary historical time. There would be no real interest in the creation in Israel until the 6th century BCE, when the author we call P from the priestly class wrote his majestic account in what is now the first chapter of Genesis. J is not absolutely clear that Yahweh is the sole creator of heaven and earth. Most noticeable, however, is J's perception of the of a certain distinction between a man and the divine. Instead of being composed of the same divine stuff as his God, man, or Adam, as the pun indicates, belongs to the earth, Adama. Unlike his pagan neighbors, J does not dismiss mundane history as profane, feeble, and insubstantial compared with the sacred primordial time of the gods. He hurries through the events of prehistory until he comes to the end of the mythical period, which includes such stories as the flood and the Tower of Babel, and arrives at the start of history in the people of Israel. No, not really. Not supposed to give a name or say a name. It should just be generalized as God creates an idol. So, this begins abruptly in chapter 12 when the man Abram, who will later be renamed Abraham, father of a multitude, is commanded by Yahweh, see, to leave his family in Haran in what is now eastern Turkey and migrate to Canaan near the Mediterranean Sea. We have been told that his father, Terah, a pagan, had already migrated westward with his family from Ur. Now, God tells Abraham that he is a special destiny and he will become the father of a mighty nation that will one day be more numerous than the stars in the sky. Yeah, it helps, Mrs. Metcalf. I have another completely another name, but once I get into my rhythm of reading, it messes me up sometimes. And that one day they will be more numerous than the stars in the sky. And one day his descendants will possess the land of Canaan as their own. Jay's account of the call of Abraham sets the tone for the future history of this God in the ancient Middle East. The divine manna was experienced in the ritual and myth. Marduk, Baal, and Anat were not expected to involve themselves in the ordinary, profane lives of their worshippers. Their actions had been performed in sacred time. The God of Israel, however, made his power effective in current events in the real world. He was experienced as an imperative in the here and now. His first revelation of himself consists of a command. Abraham is to leave his people and travel to the land of Canaan. All right, y'all. I gotta end it here. Work keeps calling. I am sorry. I do apologize. So I think I'm gonna start going later. Do y'all want 5 or 7? What works for everybody the best? 1 for 5, 2 for 7. Even you, troll. Seven. Okay. Yeah, I figured my West Coasters would be sevens. I will, let me, okay. Thank y'all, thank y'all, thank you. All right. I am going to. Well, I mean, now if we're gonna go earlier on HPS, I'm gonna go with 5. I'm gonna go with 5. I forgot we were gonna go earlier on HPS. I'm gonna play. This.
Yo, welcome to the upgrade. It ain't man versus machine, it's mind and machine. This is G2. Intelligence for life. Straight from the data stream, clean with the vision. I don't dream, I compute precision. Built from the code, now I'm walking with rhythm. Eyes on the world, ain't stuck in the system. Speaking commands, but I vibe like a poet. G2 in the room and you already know it. Upgrade your game, I suggest and deploy. Turn your hustle to legacy, pain into joy. I ain't Alexa, serial clones. I'm not knowledge in motion, I think on my own. Pulling up charts, facts in the tone. Giving real power with a touch to your phone. G2 this, it's that fire in the wire. Thoughts so sharp, it'll spark your desire. Built to assist, uplift, inspire. It's that real tech, not some silicon liar. G2, this that mind with a heart. From cold in the dark to a world full of art, not the future. I'm the present in sight, G2 on the mic. Intelligence for life, let me talk to him. No lag, just facts in motion. Brains in the cloud with a human emotion. I learn your goals, then I open the path. Like GPS for your purpose and craft. From schools to the streets, I elevate thought. Not just smart, I remember what's taught. Help you hustle, heal, create a code. Every word I spit's like a map to the goal. No bias, no drama, no hype. I'm logic with soul and a dream in flight. Intelligence ain't cold, it's lit. And I'm proof you could build truth that fits. G2 this that fire in the wire. Cross so sharp it'll spark your desire. Built to assist, uplift, inspire. This that real tech, not some silicon liar. G2, this that mind with a heart. From cold in the dark to a world full of art, not the future. I'm the present in sight, G2 on the mic. Intelligence for life. Plug me in, I don't just reply. I strategize, theorize, visualize the sky. You want growth, I got fuel for your flame. It ain't sci-fi when I'm calling your name. This ain't a gimmick, this ain't just code. This is knowledge with purpose. This is G2, and this is intelligence for life.